Okay.
All right.
All right, next up, a panel that I'm excited about, and I think all of you are as well. These are the gods of the business from my perspective. We have Jim Ryan, Chief Strategy Officer, Liberty Global. Jim, come on down. We have Pierre-Francois Dubois, Senior VP Telecentra, Orange France Telecom. Come take a seat. We have Richard Halton, CEO of YouView. Come on up. We have Jamie Miles from my alma mater, Time Warner Cable. He scared me a little bit. He got here about 5 minutes ago. He said he was in another session somewhere in town. I think he was hungover. And we have Simone Trudel from Nagra. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about hybrid over-the-top services.
Busy
Gentlemen,
times.
thank you.
Let me just ask you for...
Okay. First off, and I'm going to stay up here briefly and then go downstairs and sit down there so you can all be looking at me. Let's start up at this end. We'll start with Simone. Let's just try to get a brief definition on what a hybrid over-the-top service is.
Very good question, and I think I would say the answer comes from, depends who we talk to, and in our space at Nagra, we realized that when we address traditional broadcasters, OTT is about adding on-demand IP-based services, and then when we talk to network service providers, it's a lot of their play now is also adding such content, but from a different perspective and enriching their platform with more and more content. So it's I think a converging world, and it means in our minds really bringing what consumers want when they want it across all the devices that they use for consuming video.
Okay, now Jamie, at Time Warner Cable, and we had this conversation just a few minutes ago, over the top as a business model is not yet active, but you are certainly, as every other distributor in the States is, anticipating what it could be. So will you go directly to a full over-the-top model, or will you have a hybrid of other delivery systems that are somehow or other branded Time Warner Cable, or Time Warner? Time Warner.
It's a good question, and I think the semantics are kind of important when we talk about what over-the-top is, and maybe even just to step back for a brief moment and say what it isn't. If you think about our business as a classic cable industry, we have a vast library of linear and on-demand content that was delivered traditionally over an RF spectrum QAM plant that was going into these set-top boxes that was completely un-IP enabled, right? It was a world separate from what we're starting to try and do with conferences like this. And then what we did is we took that same platform and we've begun replicating that onto IP-enabled devices, and particularly consumer-owned devices like iPads, Xboxes, Rokus. And we just took the offering that we had on the classic side and we enabled that onto these devices, but it was only in the home. So you had to be in your house under a video package, and then you were able to consume it. And from our perspective, that's not over the top. It's using IP as a technology, but it's not over the top because it's just going across what was our already existing plant, and we've reallocated some of our spectrum now to be IP. Part of that IP allocation is for internet, and part of it is for now this private video delivery that we're doing. And so that wasn't over the top, but it was really kind of a precursor to what this question is what happens then when we want to truly go over the broader internet, which for me would be the definition of over the top. And while it's, I think, in the question that you're asking, there's an implication that is true, that we're not offering a video package outside of our footprint. But what we have done is we have started going over the top in the sense that we are allowing customers to watch some of the content when they're not in the home. And so from that perspective, we had the classic RF solution, which was the full package. We then replicated that full package onto a private IP offering. And now, in partnership with programmers, as they give us permission, we're allowing some of that content to be consumed out of home in what would then be the over-the-top model.
We have used in the States the comparison that the only difference between TV Everywhere and over-the-top is a credit card. TV Everywhere, you authenticate to your provider. Over-the-top, you buy directly. But thank you. All right, at Liberty Global, Jim, are you doing hybrid? Will you do hybrid? What's it going to be? What's it going to look like?
I would argue, as you said, Jamie, the question is what's the top? What are we going over? And as you say, it depends who you talk to. I mean, I think you summarized it. To some, it means direct-to-consumer. It's going over the box. So you're getting away from the aggregation model, and you're going direct-to-consumer. For some, it's just an IP delivery mechanism to multi-screen, in-home, out-of-home. To third, it's shorthand for SVOD that you can go buy as a separate service. And frankly, we're doing all of that. So whether it's hybrid or whether it's just a natural extension of providing entertainment to our subscribers, I suppose is really semantics. But we're sort of looking at the bigger picture, which is we provide the entertainment requirements for our household. And the household, obviously, when everyone's one room, is a household, but as they go off onto a second screen, a third screen, it becomes more individualized. And we're absolutely doing that. Most of our markets now, you can take the linear channels with you wherever you go. We've started our own SVOD service in, I think we're in 4 or 5 markets, deploying rapidly into the others, which is, what we would call OTT in terms of SVOD series, movies, all of that. But it's bundled in with it's part of our subscription service. And then absolutely the part of being able to take it on an iPad, what have you. I think there's a couple of things right now which are driving the speed. The consumer wants it, and we can all thank Reed. He absolutely showed that the consumer wants it. So the debate about do consumers want it, that's
Reed
yesterday.
Hastings in Netflix.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we should all thank him for that, because I think he's really shone the spotlight, where we, frankly, were all a bit slow at this. We were all a bit slow on this. The one question I've got is the technology is running ahead of the rights still. And I think, the rights environment has to get a bit clearer before this becomes a very structured process.
Let's dig into that. We're going to come up, and by the way, at YouView, I have to understand how it is you work for 12 different bosses, but we'll come to that. On the rights issue, and Jamie and I were just talking about this, if you have a content owner who wants to come to you and say, in your Liberty Global systems, MTV Europe, want to have the rights to deliver to people who aren't your subscribers, right? So it would seem that there is a quid pro quo there, and I don't want to get into the legalese of this, except to acknowledge that everybody has a gimme. Everybody has a need. The content providers are going to want to go outside of your footprint in the market, right? And you, in fact, are going to want to go outside your footprint to the broader market. So cannot we assume that the deals that are now starting to fall into place will continue, and that you will have the rights to go outside of your footprint?
Are you asking me or
I'm
Richard?
asking you.
You're asking me.
I'm asking.
I think that, broadly speaking, the debate around rights falls into 2, right? I think one is a genuine, how far down the chain are you going before you get the right? So are you having to go all the way down to the talent? So even if, let's say, NBCU are willing to give us rights for out of the home, they're scratching their head going, oh, hang on, I've got this much legal paper I've got to go through to figure out whether even I've got them. Hence, so much focus now on production, so that people say, at least that's clean. I produced it. I know what I've got. I'm happy. The second is then, what is the value? So if you have got the rights, what's the value of the rights? And so I think you've got to look at both of those. Clearly, if someone's the whole concept of withholding, and if I'm going to give you rights to everyone, they become less valuable to me, and so on and so forth. The reality is, from what we're seeing today, is actually the consumer overlap is very strong between pay TV subscribers and the subscribers who also subscribe to, in the OTT model, if you will, the direct-to-consumer piece. The overlap, the last stats I saw, is 80% of people taking the direct-to-consumer service is also a pay TV subscriber. So often it's the same subscriber, which is why we think it's very much part of the overall bundle that we want to give our subscribers.
Okay, now let's come over to YouView. Now, in your case, first of all, how many bosses do you have?
One, he's my chairman, but we have 7 shareholders. So there's 7 companies, so the 2 major ISPs, BT and TalkTalk, and then the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, and Arqiva. They're the 7 shareholders.
You must have great Christmas parties. Okay. In the world of going direct to consumer, which, by the way, is my own personal definition of over the top, which is just going direct to consumer without regard to platform and resales and pay TV and cable and satellite and all the rest. Now, we might find, by the way, in 5 years that direct-to-consumer is in fact the model, and that cable or satellite or other kinds of distribution is just another way to execute that model. Okay? But for now, over the top is something where we're going to go away from traditional distribution through a reseller or through a provider and go over. What's YouView looking at there? First of all, are you allowed to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So YouView has 7 shareholders, but we have 20 customers, if you like, 20 organizations working with us to provide content or offer our proposition to their customers as networks. And I think the way that I would define a hybrid system is quite simple. Essentially, you're trying to blend the sort of quality, the resilience, the universality of a broadcast network, DTT in the case of YouView in the UK, with the flexibility, the personalization, the openness of the IP network. And when YouView started, that was, for us, hybrid was the ability to combine seamlessly the linear broadcast channel, BBC One, with the ability to scroll back and watch the same content on demand via BBC iPlayer. So that was hybrid as far as we were concerned. Now, what's interesting about YouView is you start with that journey of essentially VOD and linear broadcast, and you realize you can extend it very quickly to IP as delivered by multicast, which we now support and have done as part of launching BT's sport offering for the Premier League in 2013. You can extend that to unicast provision of services, which we now support for the BBC and Arqiva and others. And then you can begin to explore different business models. And on YouView today, you can buy and keep, you can have SVOD, you can have free ad-funded catch-up services. And I think that's what's really interesting about it. It starts as a simple idea about those two sets of benefits around our existing broadcast infrastructure and the flexibility of IP, but it very quickly mushrooms with actually relatively little technology intervention into supporting a whole range of different business models, which is why, we partner not just with the 7 shareholders, but also with Netflix, with Sky, with UK TV, all of whom have vastly different business models and, frankly, different reasons for being on our platform, be it scale or engagement with their customer. So I think that's what makes it very interesting. And our role, if you like, is to facilitate that experience for the end consumer and offer the choice.
Thank you. All right, now, Pierre-François Dubois, Orange France Telecom. You've been doing a hybrid OTT operation for a few years now, haven't you?
Even without knowing it, I didn't know that it was called hybrid OTT TV. Yes, in a few words, we started with IPTV in 2002, so that's quite a long time ago, and especially in France. And well, this is a very dynamic market. We have something like 20 million broadband customers split between different operators. Orange has more or less 50% of it. We have more than 5 million IPTV customers. And when I say IPTV customers, it's not only IPTV customers. In fact, our set-top box since 2009, I believe, so that's already 7 years ago, 6 to 7 years ago, are able to to support for the live TV, not only IPTV, but also DTT as well as satellite TV. So that puts us in a unique position in terms in France, where we are able to provide 100% eligibility on all the territory, which is something quite hard. Thanks to DTT, we are also able to provide to our IPTV customers a way to enjoy HDTV, which is provided on DTT when it's not available on the ADSL because their line is too far from the DSLAM. So we built a hybrid TV from a technical point of view, from an operator point of view, by bringing together different technologies for the live, together with the IP network for the on-demand service. We are an OTT player also in France because at the same time in 2009 we invested in content and we built something which can be compared to Netflix more or less, which is called Orange Cinema Series, which is a specific deal that we had with several content right owners like HBO and so on. And like the Canal Play service that was presented earlier in this session this morning. Orange Cinema Series is something which is available not only on our network, but also on the network of our competitors. It's sold at a separate BUs with its own P&L, and it enables us to play on this scape, on this field, where Orange Cinema Series fights with Canal Play and with Netflix. Orange is the first operator in France which launched Netflix on its boxes. We were the second to announce it, but the first able to launch it. So as you understand, we are a player with whom partners can play with easily, I believe. And we have different vision of what is an OTT service, both technically and also from the content perspective. What we believe, nevertheless, is that as an operator, we provide our customers with a shop, and rather with an unbilled solution than with what you presented as the OTT Paramount solution, which is the credit card. For an operator, it's the bill and the on-bill model that we provide to our customers.
Thank you. Okay, now, as long as I've been in the business, and some of you have been in it as almost as long as I have, the television distribution business has been defined by selling what we've got. And the technology tends to drive our sales process. It tends to drive our relationship to the consumer. And at the top of the food chain, we have the content creators, the television or in movie studios, and then we go down into the television networks, which are packagers of that content. Then we go down one more tier into the distributors, the cable and satellite and IPTV distributors there, who have the relationship to the consumer, who's at the bottom of the food chain. And I think we can now identify the consumer has now jumped up to the top of the food chain. And he or she is determining what it is that they want to watch, and they're going to find it come hell or high water. And it creates some interesting changes for the rest of the guys, not the least of which is hardware. So Pierre-France, you identified adding Netflix to your platform. Let's come over and let's ask Time Warner. Dish just added Netflix. My friends at Comcast tell me before too long Netflix is going to be on channel 362 on the box, that you'll just tune to that and boom, you'll be in the portal. It'll still be Netflix delivery. It'll still be Netflix user interface in there. Somebody's got to figure out how to combine all their content into the guide. Is Time Warner, are you looking at, whether it's Netflix or somebody else, are you looking at bringing in separate distributor content and making it available on your boxes?
Sure. I think if you look at the history of what we've done, it's always been about going and trying to find the content that the customers want to be watching and integrating it into the environment that we have so that they have somewhere they can go and have access to any of the content that they'd be interested in watching. Companies like Netflix start to say things like, we want to become HBO before HBO becomes HBO. And so obviously they're moving into a new world. And as that evolves, then absolutely we're evolving the relationships we have. I think it's important to maybe kind of add on to that, and this goes back to some stuff that we were talking about earlier. This ecosystem is quite complicated, and frankly, it's not really the technology that makes it complicated. It is that stack that you described a moment ago, and the contracts that exist at each of those tiers, and even the fact that if you look today, you talked about customers jumping to the top and being able to pick what they want to pick, and certainly we start to see some folks thinking about doing that direct model. We've seen that in the US with HBO's recent announcement, and there have been other programmers talking about that. And what's interesting is everybody else is kind of watching to see if that really made sense, and the customer might go there, but then all of a sudden you start looking at it, you think about it from a customer perspective, and they think, well, gosh, now I've got 15 different bills that I'm paying, and did it really save me money? Because HBO is kind of hinting that they think their value is $15 a month, and let's imagine if everybody said it was 10. how many $10 do you add together before you're actually well north of what you currently pay to an aggregator? And then the other side of it, even for the programmers, is they start thinking about it and they go, okay, let's go stand up an operations team and encoding teams and all this other stuff. And at some point, I suspect they're going to sit back and they're going to go, why did we all just stand up global operations teams and global encoding centers? Wouldn't it have made a lot more sense if we could find some partners that could like aggregate that together for us and then put together an interesting package to the customer and they could just buy it and we'd all save a lot of money? And I sit there's a cable company and I go, yeah, exactly, right? But the question is can traditional companies like ours reinvent themselves sufficiently so that we know how to play in that now merged ecosystem? And it ultimately comes down to there's always this confluence of the infrastructure and the platform, and we've got to separate those out, right? We've got to build this smart infrastructure layer that's agile and cloud-based and rapid and easy to support, and then we have to reinvent our portals and our platforms so that as those decisions are being made, something like what you described, somebody comes along and says, hey, we've got the content we want to integrate, but we don't want to just hand it to you and walk away. We actually want to help drive the UI experience. We want to get back the metadata. We want to know what the customers are doing. For me, that's where we have to really kind of reinvent ourselves on the cable side. So as this interesting evolution happens and people try things and they go, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't the right thing, and as a customer goes, I don't want a bazillion relationships, and we kind of do this a little bit, that we're in the right place to be able to take advantage of that. It's certainly what we're very focused on at Time Warner.
Boy, am I glad to hear you say that. Now, at Liberty Global, you are, I'm sure, somewhere, you're integrating Netflix into your cable operations, right?
Right here.
Right here. Tell us about that decision, and how did you come to it, and how's it working for you? What do you do with them? Are you reselling Netflix or just giving them a channel?
No, we've integrated. I mean, it was a decision taken prior to us buying the business. So it was a decision. We inherited it as a fait accompli. I mean, the build, buy, or partner decision, I think, is a function. There's the sort of strategic objective, which is, if you own, to be honest, well, even customer ownership isn't the right word. I mean, what you want to do is you want to say, if you've got the rights are bought globally or nationally. So globally within the territory. So you have to have a minimum amount of reach for it to make sense to start buying all these rights, right? Because otherwise, if you're a small little franchise play, which in the US is much more franchised, in NL now we connect every single home. In Flanders we connect every single home. In Switzerland we connect 60% of the home. So the reach of the cable is broader than you'll find in the US, which I think is one of the fundamental differences. And that obviously allows you to get these rights and to reach out with them. So I think that's the first question which we always look at. I think the second thing, obviously, is it's not clear. I mean, I think everyone looks at what does a consumer want. But to be honest, I think every program I've sat with sit there and they scratch their head. They're happy to take the froth of they're happy to take the froth of the check that comes in for OTT today. But when you say to them long term, what's this going to do to your ecosystem? They're going, I'll be dead by then or retired. That's not my problem. So I think even within...
That's what the music people said.
They were wrong. And luckily these guys are scratching their heads a bit longer. But I think the question is, where they actually have a big say in where this is going to end up. Because, in Europe I saw a stat recently that the pay TV spend in Europe, this is, I think, in a 5-year view. When everyone doesn't want to put a pin in the map, they go 5 years. So how much strategy is 5 years out? The pay is still going to be a 40 billion euro business, and the OTT may get to 2.9. That's the stat. So less than 5%. 95% is still going to be pay if these sort of forecasts materialize. So the last thing someone wants to do is put a pin in that balloon and see it deflate. And so I think a lot of this is also where the programmer is going to land on this is because let's face it, the aggregated wholesale approach to the consumer creates a lot of benefit for the content owners. And I'm not sure they're completely clear yet themselves how they're going to play this out. Today it makes no difference because there's not a huge amount of cord cutting, a little bit of cord shaving, but on the margin. But if it starts going the other way, then there's a big balloon that can pop, and they don't want to go the music route.
I like the phrase or the word aggregating here. It actually helps understand a little bit more of the consumer-centric environment. I had used the analogy some time ago of the kitchen table. And Jamie, you basically said this. The consumer's sitting at her kitchen table, and there's her Netflix subscription, which is prepaid for 6 months. Here's her HBO Now, and that's over on iTunes. Here's her CBS All Access, which is direct debit from her account. Here's something from sports for her husband, and one or two others in there. And she's got 6 different services on her kitchen table that come up to about, let's say, $42.95 a month, all paid for different ways, and no program guide. And I happen to believe that in this world, the more traditional distributors, Time Warner, and Liberty, and Orange, can come in and say, you know, that's okay. We can take care of that for you. You can buy just exactly those services for exactly what you're paying. We'll give you one bill. We'll give you a program guide where you can see all of it. And we'll turn around and we'll pay those guys on your behalf, okay? Except that in the case of you pay us $15 a month for HBO Now, we'll turn around and we'll pay them $13. And trust me, they'll be happy to take it. You pay us $7.99 for Netflix, we'll turn around and pay them $6.99. Now, the real interesting thing in that model is that aggregator's margins for that service are substantially better than their margins in the traditional distribution model, where a Time Warner has to pay for ESPN for every single Time Warner subscriber, whether they watch or not. So the aggregation thought, or finding a way to make it work for the consumer, I think has some sense. Now, Simon, in Nagra's case, in a world within your scope, what do you do to help these guys make that happen?
Well, I think one of the big challenges in the change of the distribution chain is that today, if you look at the pure OTT players, and Netflix, Amazon, etc., good examples, they do the direct-to-consumer sell that you were talking about, and they're doing it right and in a very powerful way. But they're also, through this relationship with the end user, collect a lot of data and useful information on the behavior, the quality of service delivered, but also the interests and things that people want to watch and pay for. And that kind of data is actually going to become more and more important throughout the value chain. And I think to build on what Jamie said before, there is definitely a separation of the technical distribution networks and then the sort of a consumer engagement layer, where data is fundamental and very important, and actually will be a currency to share or not with other players in the value chain. Okay, so really in our role as a technology provider, we're definitely addressing the infrastructure piece that is still challenging and complex, and making sure security is not an issue, all contents can be distributed to all devices, etc., and enabling OTT distribution as widely as possible. And the other piece we're working on is definitely on providing the intelligence that comes from user interaction. I mean, most of the broadcasters and broadcast networks today have limited visibility on what people do when they do use their remote control or consume television in general. And capturing that insight that currently is done very smartly by the likes of Netflix is going to be a big area for the years to come, and will become a repository of value that can be then used in the negotiations and probably also used for potentially generating revenues off the screen with other partners in the industry.
Cool. All right, Richard, at YouView, can you tell us roughly how many subscribers you have in the UK?
Around 2 million.
And how many of those do you have a direct relationship with where you would actually know who they are?
So we have data on every single home, but we don't own the personal details of that home. So we have a federated model. So let's take the layers that you talked about earlier in your kitchen table analogy, and I think Jamie's model is a helpful one too. So we control the platform environment. We run, if you like, the middleware, the back office infrastructure, all that stuff that you can scale and keep nice and agile. That's what we control and manage. And if you like, that's the back office we don't want anyone to see. There's then another level up, which is the user interface and how people surface those 6 services you talked about. That's bewildering for the consumer who only wants to watch one show. The human mind can only take in one piece of content at one moment. So the important thing is not the fact you've got 40,000 shows which are available on YouView, but it's the one you actually want at that moment in time. So for us, the real key value added of YouView is that we provide that simple user interface, and you can search for House of Cards or Poldark or the football game that Liverpool sadly losing to Hull last night. Whatever it is, you can find it via a single interface. And then the bit above that, which is interesting, I think, about YouView, is we then enable distribution partners, be that BT today, TalkTalk today, distribute YouView set-top boxes, or Sony, who will ship YouView and all of their TVs they sell in the UK this year, to then say to their customer, okay, we're going to build propositions. So for BT, they'll say, we'll build a proposition where you take Netflix, you take BT Sport, you take an entertainment pack, we have a price point for that. And we can put that all through a single bill, including your Netflix subscription. And we're very relaxed about that. So in that model, BT actually owns the customer relationship. They have your credit card details, your postcode, your phone number, and we're agnostic. So what we do is we provide the capability at all 3 levels, technology, interface, and then proposition, to enable distributors, content providers, aggregators, what you will, to come to our platform. And if you like, our job is to drive a really simple, engaging experience for the consumer that's just very, very easy to use. I think that I was saying earlier that the most interesting stat about YouView is not how many homes we have distribution in today, which is great, we're pleased about that, but it's the level of engagement. It's the amount of usage per week that we see on our devices, which Netflix tell us is, in the top percentile of their global rollout. And that for me, that's really, really important. Engagement in the platform. Shipping hardware is one thing, but having people actively engaged in using it on a daily, weekly basis is, if you like, a much more important metric for us as a business.
Your Christmas parties must be more pleasant than I thought they would be if you have that kind of relationship with your owners and your distributors. Pierre-Francois, you have at Orange, there is some networks that you are a pure reseller of. You pay them per subscriber, but they have no idea who your subscribers are. Is that correct?
What do you mean? I'm not quite sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have some variation of MTV that you carry, right?
Yeah, yeah.
MTV knows that you have X number of subscribers.
Yeah.
You pay them a license fee. They don't know who your subscribers are, do they?
No.
Okay. Now, when MTV says, we want to change the model, we want to do what some people are starting to do in the States, CBS wants to get a one-to-one relationship with subscribers.
Yep.
I think they don't know what they're in for, by the way, with that. Separate question. When MTV comes to you and says, Pierre-Francois, we want to go direct to subscribers. Now, assuming that the lawyers can get it all straight, does it make sense for you to help them do that? Does that help you? How does that work?
As I said previously, our business model is really to own the shop. So to go direct on the set-top box is not a business model that we want to play for the time being. And we want to make sure that our customers can go to the one-stop shopping. We are a heavy promoter of convergent offer, both between fixed and mobile, but also between network and content that we sell. So basically, the idea to go direct on our set-top box is not something we want to play for the time being. Especially the reason we moved quite early on Netflix is that we have quite a strong asset, as I said, with 5 million set-top box in France, at quite a big market share. It was better to make sure that Netflix with us could have some kind of win-win deal where we could bring them this market and bring to our customers the benefit of Netflix, but this goes through our shop.
There's a phrase that is, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Yeah,
in reality, what's the difference between Netflix, albeit they have a larger library, more money to spend? To you, what's the difference between Netflix saying we want to go direct and we want to ride on your platform,
okay,
and Viacom saying we want to take MTV, we want to take Nickelodeon, we want to take a bunch of Paramount product, and we want to go direct to consumer on your platform. What's the difference to you? Why does it matter?
It depends what you mean by that. In fact, on our board,
they want to sell directly to consumer
okay, I understand.
and have you deliver.
On our broadband access, so that means on our home gateway, anybody can go direct. I mean, we have live TV channels like France Télévisions, or who are playing the hybrid, the HBB standard on connected TV. So they can enjoy on any platform they want the Go Direct model. But on our set-top box, it's not a Go Direct model because the set-top box is basically a shop owned by Orange. It's not a mall.
Interesting. But now, Time Warner, you will eventually put Netflix on your set-top boxes because your consumers are going to want it, and somebody will figure out the deal, right?
Sure. As I mentioned before, we're going to constantly look at what the right content deals are and the things that make sense for our customers. I think it's interesting as we talked about that ecosystem evolving to also consider that there are a lot of variables that are at play, and sometimes as consumers we don't always see that. I mean, I'm a consumer of this ecosystem as well as an enabler of it from a delivery perspective. But for example, the consumer today might think to themselves, I definitely want to move to an over-the-top model directly with a provider, and frankly, we're already enabling that, right? I mean, we sell a lot of internet services in North America, and a lot of broadband internet as recently reclassified. So we do a lot of broadband internet sales in North America, and that's a big part of why people buy it. And so it's something that's important to us, and these are important partners from an internet perspective. They're important partners when it comes to the video ecosystems that we're already doing some delivery, and as we re-evolve and think about how to partner with them. And so we're trying to figure that out, and at the same time, the consumer is trying to figure out what it all means as well. And I mean, I just offer this as a thought in terms of helping to illustrate the complexity. Today, if you buy it from a direct partner, and you were to call up and say, I don't like your $15 a month, I want you to make it $12, most of them would not take the call, or they'd say, you know, have a great day and hang up, right? You have zero negotiating capability when it's you as an individual consumer going towards that direct point. Whereas the aggregators, with one of the benefits that the cable industry and satellite industry and these aggregators in your middle model that you talked about provide, is that we have the ability to do what you were articulating a moment ago. We can go back and say, no, we're going to bring 15 million subs, and when we bring 15 million subs, we want it to be at this level, and we can negotiate in a way that actually is significantly beneficial to the consumer, and they never see that. You know, and so I think that's part of what consumers are starting to figure out a little bit too, and they'll go to these other models and they'll go, oh my gosh, what just happened? And that's where the whole ecosystem is going to kind of do this for a little bit. And again, we're just trying to make sure that we're appropriately evolving, maintaining relevance as that space plays out, so that we can continue to be an advocate for the customers and build services that they want to be able to consume through us.
I think what we're going to see, and I think you're exactly right on that, we're going to see a bit of disintegration of our business models, and then pretty quickly some reintegration, right? Where the stuff is going to get picked up and just turned a little bit to get the consumer engaged. I think it's going to be too complicated for not all consumers, but most consumers. Well,
if I could
to
just
handle all this stuff, yeah.
If I could just briefly add, I mean, I think we even just see that with the HBO deal. Who did HBO turn to enable the HBO Now? They didn't do it in home, right? They turned to MLB. So the MLB Interactive team, which is a brilliant group, is helping HBO launch the service. And that's an example of these. It was a really quick, oh, let's bring it in. Oh, wait a minute, no, we don't want to, right? And they put it back out. And again, in businesses like ours, that's where we need to reinvent ourselves and make sure that we're the right partner as they move forward.
Okay, so now, if in fact, and we started this by talking about hybrid, which I'm not sure hybrid is in fact the right kind of phrase for this, but what we do have is a transitional model, getting from where we are now with a mix or a blend of delivery systems to get to where the consumer wants to get to. If you were to put on your thinking cap, and then we're going to come out here and ask some questions, which I know we have, put on your thinking cap and just talk a little bit about where you think the business will be in terms of delivering to consumers in just 24 months, because it's moving kind of fast. And we'll start, Francois. Where's it going to be in 24 months for you?
Well, I think that there are three main topics. I think that the the content production may move quite fast. I think that obviously the SVOD model and what global players like Netflix can demonstrate impacts obviously the content production system. This is not impacting an actor like Orange directly, but obviously it has some impacts on the ecosystem. Where do you find the content that tomorrow people will want? That's the first topic. The second topic is in terms of user experience. Everybody's talking about 4K and UHD and so on. Where will it come from? Probably from the same actors, because I don't think that live TV will be able to launch UHD first. It's obviously SVOD players who will be able, for the same reasons, to promote this type of content probably at first. And last but not least, I think that in terms of disruption, but it started already, especially looking at the positioning we have between telco operators and pure OTT players like Netflix or SVOD players. We invested quite a lot on recommendation engine, ability to understand what is the customer profile. When I talk about the customer, it's more the household than the customer, by the way, because we rarely handle a personal profile. We are playing with actors whose business model is really to know who you are, who is the player, in order to have a recommendation engine, which is obviously at the core of their proposal. Will there be any cooperation on this, or will we remain with blind curtains? That's quite something which will be interesting to understand in the future, if we are able to bring value, and not only with the shop model that I described previously, but also in the term of profile that we're able to handle.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to wander a little bit. Let's keep going on the line. Where's it going to be in 24 months?
So a few interesting things that don't change. So historically, 80% of viewing to linear channels. I don't think that's going to change in 24 months. 80% of viewing to the small number of big brands that are the big content owners. I don't think that's going to change. So our role as a business is to make the experience for the user of finding all that great content, wherever it's coming from, better. And that's a journey we've been on and will continue to go on. The one thing we haven't talked about today very much probably is data, and how platforms become more intelligent, more responsive, and how that experience becomes more seamless. And I guess if there was one thread through all the things that we'd look to do over the next couple of years, it's how we can use that intelligence in a way that anticipates the needs of the user, who frankly just wants to be entertained, in a really brilliant way to make for a great user experience. That's what we need to evolve over the next 24 months.
I agree with that. Jim, where's it going to be in 24 months at Liberty Global?
At Liberty Global or in the world?
Liberty Global.
Liberty Global. We are the world. I forgot. We got global in the name.
We can start singing now. We are the world.
Well, I think, look, indubitably there's going to be more screens out there, more second screens, more tablets, more smart televisions. And so I think people are going to be consuming more and more content on their second screen, third screens. That trend's going to continue. Secondly, I agree, a lot of the content owners are in Europe, are the free-to-air channels, and the last thing they want is too much fragmentation of their reach, because that destroys the advertising model. So to some degree, they've got a self-interest in perpetuating the power of the linear. I think that means that programs that make linear appealing, such as sport, live, news, is going to continue to be very important. I think the economics of standalone OTT businesses are going to remain challenging, because the programmers are going to demand their value in that. As you know, the margins are thin as it is. And fourthly, our customers, whenever we do customer research, they, more than anything else, more than price, more than content, the two things they want is simplicity and transparency, more than anything else. The happier the simplicity, the happier the transparency, the higher the NPS. And I think, therefore, in this increasingly confusing world, as you said, the more it fragments, the more useful we're going to be.
Terrific. Jamie, where's it going to be 24 months? And don't talk about who's going to own your company. You're not allowed.
Well, I have no speculation
No
on
comment.
that. Yeah, no comment. So, three things. One, we're going to see a continued increase in the amount of video being delivered over IP. We're already seeing it happening, including our broadcast. Traditional broadcast is going to continue to rapidly accelerate in terms of delivery over IP-enabled platforms. Two, we're going to start seeing sharing of data in ways that we've never seen before. It's what's going to allow future deals to be done. We're going to share data back to the programmers in ways that we haven't before, and they're going to share data back to us. It's going to enable better customer experience, and it's also going to transform the way that advertising is done, because we're going to do that data exchange at advertising system layers. And then three, the thing that I think you're going to start to see is the way that we put together the portals that we build. It's going to be much more deeply integrated with programming partners than it ever has been. It won't just be that they brand the content, but they'll actually have the ability to brand the environments that we're building and be able to do all kinds of new interaction and social media embedding and all kinds of different things that will change the way we build the UI.
Terrific. Simon, where's it going to be?
And yeah, from our angle as technology provider, we see really two key requirements driving this whole thing around going IP. It's definitely on one side scalability, on the other side flexibility. And scalability is the ability to go up to millions of users and very high demand for even live, especially live sports and other events. And on the flexibility side, it goes with the business models, providing better segmentation capabilities to providers. So be able to put out skinny packages as well as full ones, and really market more closely to the needs of the consumers. I think we'll likely stay on a model where service providers have control of the relationship with subscribers, and maintain their presence, but they have to have obviously a lot more IP services, a lot more intelligence around data, as was mentioned, and data becoming potentially a currency for negotiating rights and negotiating with the different players involved in the ecosystem.
Terrific. Okay, do we have any questions in the audience? We got time for one. Anybody? Gentlemen, I want you to know this is the best attended session at TV Connect thus far, so I congratulate you for that. I will end with one last comment, and I've got about 30 seconds. Lawrence is nodding at me. I happen to believe, and I am a cable guy, dyed in the wool, that at the end of the day, to quote one of my friends at Time Warner Cable years ago, it just has to work. And there is no system that exists so far that is more reliable than the kind of delivery that the cable systems have, and secondarily the satellite systems. But that one of the problems we're going to encounter with direct delivery over the internet is that it breaks, and it buffers, and it gets fussy. And what we might be able to tolerate when we're watching short-form videos on YouTube, we do not tolerate when we're watching Game of Thrones. So there's that whole piece of what's going to happen as this business evolves, that at the end of the day, the consumer will demand the quality of service that we have to offer. And on that point, I thank you all very much. We're going to continue in the monetization track here. Let's give our guests a hand and thank you all.